The EPA just did its annual review of Texas oil wells and has found some earth-shattering results. Literally. According to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's annual evaluation of how the Texas Railroad Commission oversees thousands of injection and disposal wells, basically underground resting places for millions of gallons of toxic waste from fracking and other drilling activities, the existence of those wells have ended up increasing seismic activity in the Lone Star State. That's according to this study. They write, in light of findings from several researchers, its own analysis in some cases, and the fact that earthquakes diminished in some areas following shut-in or reduced injection volume of targeted wells, the August 15 report states the EPA believes that there is a significant possibility that North Texas earthquake activity is associated with disposal wells. Now, of course, scientists have known for decades that, hey, if you inject fluid deep underground, you might end up creating an earthquake. And of course, a growing body of research has linked disposal wells to seismicity in Texas and other states, Oklahoma, for example, that have grown more frequent. Now, Jim Bradbury, who's a Fort Worth-based oil and gas attorney who has closely followed the earthquake saga, said he could not recall the EPA explicitly tying earthquakes to industry activity. He said of this new report, quote, "It's a big deal they said that." It's a big deal indeed. The EPA actually going out there and stating facts that happen to go contrary to the oil and gas industry. Wow, way to get some balls, EPA. I was wondering where they were. Now, Texas, home to thousands of such oil wells, oil and gas wells, is the third most at-risk state for man-made earthquakes, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, behind only Oklahoma and Kansas, which right now are being fracked to hell. Several Texas drilling regions have recently felt more earthquakes, most of them small, but tremors in the Dallas-Fort Worth area have drawn the most attention, particularly those that struck in the past 2 years. Now, the EPA is, of course, concerned about this with the level of seismic activity during 2015 in the Dallas-Fort Worth area because of the potential to impact public health and the environment, including underground sources of drinking water. Now, the Railroad Commission, which for some reason is overseeing these well disposal sites, is trying hard to explain the earthquakes away without pissing off the oil and gas industry. Raw Story writes, the agency, which has conducted its own investigation, has not publicly tied any of the shaking to industry activity, even as regulators in other petroleum states acknowledge a connection. The Railroad Commission has pushed back against the conclusions of some outside studies. Responding to the EPA report Monday, the Commission told the Texas Tribune that it takes the issue of induced seismicity very seriously and has in place some of the most stringent rules on disposal wells, which isn't really doing anything about that. But nonetheless, they said they've really cracked down on this. Not so much. Not so much. Since approving the 2014 rules, the Commission has received 56 disposal well applications in historically seismic areas. Of those, the agency has issued 28 permits with special conditions, those related to injection volumes and pressures. For instance, 11 applications were withdrawn or returned, while 3 were protested and sent to hearings, 10 permits were issued without special conditions, and 4 applications are pending. In its assessment, the EPA commended the Railroad Commission for establishing new regulations on disposal wells and clarifying its authority to shut down certain operations it ties to earthquakes. But the federal agency recognized that its own findings about North Texas seismicity run counter to what the Railroad Commission has publicly stated. Luke Metzger, director of the advocacy group Environment Texas, suggested the EPA was simply stating the obvious about the cause of the quakes. Quote, EPA should insist the Railroad Commission accept the scientific evidence and take action to protect Texans from earthquakes. I wonder why they also don't take action to try to protect Texans from climate change. Just saying. He says it's obvious to everyone that the Railroad Commission is intentionally avoiding the reality that the larger scientific community has embraced and is working on. Oh, this is from Jim Bradbury, who emailed Raw Story about this. He says, I think it reveals that the EPA is troubled by this new reality. In its report, the EPA recommends close monitoring of injection activity going forward, coupled with appropriate data analysis methods and a coordinated effort to detect possible correspondence with seismic activity. Or what we could do is ban fracking and phase out fossil fuels. It's not like we don't have the technology. We have a source of near limitless clean energy. You know what it is? It's called the fucking sun. Why don't we use that? We have the technology to harness it and run our entire country on it. We do. We also have wind power, geothermal power, and hydroelectric power. All of those can create a green energy grid. Now, why do we need to inject fresh water loaded with chemicals into the ground when we have all this stuff? Knowing that doing so, injecting this fresh water into the ground, number one, could contaminate groundwater sources, two, release larger amounts of methane gas into the atmosphere, and three, is known to cause earthquakes. Why do we continue to do it? Well, to answer that question, you got to follow the money. It's because of big money that we're destroying our environment when we could be investing in utilizing green energy. Now, how many more studies into oil and gas production do we need before we wake up and realize the dangers of it? Now, the answer to that is we could have all the studies in the world, and we're still not going to move away from fossil fuels until we get the influence of large fossil fuel industries out of our politics. And in order to do that, we've got to get rid of the money. We've got to get the money out of politics so that we can stop taking oil and gas out of the ground. Hey everybody, if you like this video, then please like this video and share. And if you want to see more like this, then please hit that subscribe button below.